What is up, everybody? Shauna D Man here, and welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are doing great. Hope you guys are having yourselves a great week, or weekend, depending on when you're watching this newest episode here on the channel as we review Lanterns Season 1, Episode 2. Now, the first episode thought was fine. It's okay. I'm not as nitpicky as some people might be in regards to that. Episode 2, there are some small nitpicks I have about it, particularly things that they added into the to the episode. So I'm just gonna give my overall thoughts. I know in episode 1 I kind of a little bit went scene by scene for the most part. Episode 2, the mystery of what's going on in Rushville continues to be intriguing, but we kind of get some answers on a few things already within the second episode. So, episode 1, if you remember, at the football game, there were 4 people that were killed at the football game. So, one of the most interesting things is, so the episode has Hal send John back home to get the lantern because the lantern is low on charge. It's like 5% left on the ring, and there's two different plots that are going on in regards to Hal and John Stewart. So the Hal side of things, while John is going to get the lantern, he is continuing like his little investigation of everything that is going on. Obviously, he consistently say his gut feeling is never wrong. He feels like something is off about this town. Come to find out, when he goes back to the football field, which was the scene of the crime where they had the 4 people who were killed at the football game, and he goes through the metal detectors. Just goes through, take a glance at the football field, looks around. Obviously, there's still I believe there's still blood on the ground and stuff like that from the incident. And as he's leaving, he notices that the metal detector does not go off, and he looks at his belt, and he then proceeds to take off part of the front of the car and walks through the metal detector, but it still does not go off. So one of the big questions is, it's a very coincidence type of situation where out of all the people that were at this football game, the four of them were killed, and all 4 of them just happened to be alien. And so he goes back into town to find the sheriff, kind of question her a little bit more about some things. They're having a town meeting. A little bit of bad timing because they're talking about whether or not they want to have the football game, or if it's still too soon to do something like that with the recent events and stuff like that. Hal comes in, not necessarily making a big show of things, but there definitely seems to be something going on. Like Carrie, the sheriff's husband, comes in, lets him know that the charges were dropped, and he kind of feels like there's something going on. There's something like on the compound that they don't want him to know about. They don't want Hal to know about. And again, like remember in episode 1 was making, he has signed an NDA, like the house, the protection, everything about it is all paid for, but he can't disclose who is the one behind the payment and everything. And so meanwhile, so Hal goes to the morgue and he grabs the bodies of all the 4 dead aliens that were killed and picked up at the football field, and he takes them back to the football field, and he takes one of them. Side note, I don't know why we had to see a full penis shot. Like, Jesus Christ, people. It's like watching Knights of the Seven Kingdom all over again. But he takes one of the bodies and he goes through the metal detector, and the metal detector goes off, but not like in the normal sense. There is a tiny little camera that is like up in the side of it, and it goes off each time. And so now it's not a coincidence that these four aliens just happen, these people that were killed just happen to be aliens. They were specifically targeted. And that is very interesting. He meets up back up with Carrie, and they go to Macon's ranch and have a conversation with him about everything. Um, Jordan is Hal is definitely trying to continuously push and try to get some kind of information about him, and there's just a conversation about talking about, the only reason you probably like invited me on just to get confirmation that the person that was arrested was an alien. He's making us talk about how he is just somebody that, how he's like, he doesn't want to make the same mistake as the people of this land did when colonizers came in and took over everything. Um, Hal eventually ends up getting shot, a warning shot, but we kind of learn a few extra things along the way, because he wakes up in the hospital, handcuffed to the bed with Carrie sitting there just reading a book and everything. So she seems to know about the cameras. She seems to know that she knows a lot more that's going on than what she originally let on. When in reality, it is Jordan's jurisdiction. These are aliens. This is something he takes over, or he's in charge of if the situation arises. Um, she questions him about Sinestro, and Hal's like, how do you know about, or like, how do you know that name and everything? And apparently Hal talks a lot in his sleep, and he's like, that's classified. And I don't know how she got this information. Like, I don't think, like, unless they battled on Earth or something, I don't know how she had access to this information. But she reads off as being how Sinestro was once a member of the Green Lantern Corps, ended up killing one of the Guardians of Oa. Hal was the one that finally took him down. And I'm just kind of like, how do you know that? How do you have access to that type of information? Because I don't think that would be something you would know about. So I don't know how she got it. That's a, a thing of the plot convenience or something. I don't know. It really didn't make sense to me on why she had it. But we do learn that she's not from Rushville. She is from Gotham. So that is an interesting thing because Hal kind of brings up how like she doesn't seem like she's from Rushville. And yeah, she mentions that she's from Gotham. The hospital they're in, there's something sketch about it because there's no patients whatsoever in this hospital, and a lot of the equipment that is there looks awfully brand new, like just straight out of the box, brand new. So there seems to be something more going on, and Carrie is trying to work with Hal on everything. He doesn't need him cutting her legs out from underneath her. She doesn't need the town trying to join in on Macon's insurrectionist uprising stuff. She's trying to keep the town together as best as possible. She's the sheriff of the town. She worked hard to earn the people's trust, and she doesn't need Jordan, compromising that in any such way. So that is the all of the Hal side of things of the story for this episode. Now going to the John side, at the beginning of the episode, one of the things is Hal has John try to fly. Doesn't really go anywhere, but Hal or John creates a construct of a bird that consistently stays with him throughout the entire episode. So Hal sends John back home to get the lantern, and he's able to get into the house. He finds the wall, and he has several. He has like 3 Green Lantern suits. And obviously, I'm surprised John Stewart didn't put one on while he had the time. But he could even ask Hal, he's like, "You sure you don't want me to bring one of the suits?" He's like, "No," and kind of like John is looking at himself in the mirror, holding it up, and he's like, "Don't forget to feed Earl. Earl is this carnivorous plant, very dangerous plant." But as John is getting ready to leave, he gets ambushed by a bunch of unknown guys. Take him captive. They It goes through this whole thing where, you know, he breaks free, escapes. I hate the way they run in this show. This was something like I noticed probably like in the first episode, the way the actor who plays Hal Jordan or John Stewart runs, and I saw it here in this episode too. Like the way they run is just so wonky to me. Like I don't know what it is, but it's just a wonky looking thing. Um, but besides that, he gets knocked out. He awakens. He is surrounded by a group of basically aliens as well. The guy, I think his name was Wayland, the guy that blew himself up at the end of episode 1. He was a part of this group. This group is essentially looking for a manhunter. And he goes through and tells John what manhunters are these beings that can like shapeshift and stuff like that, and they possess they're around longer than the Lanterns, and probably maybe not the Guardians, but definitely the Green Lanterns. And even the leader of this particular group, questions how the bird construct is still around, even though the ring and Hal Jordan are so far away. And then obviously John's like, "That's mine," and he's kind of surprised. And a little side note, Hal is also surprised about it at the beginning of the episode as well. That without the ring, he's able to keep this construct around. Now they're playing really loose with the rules of how the ring works and stuff like that. I don't know if this is one of those things, but I do know that like it seemed like they are messing around with some of the ring lore from the comic books and stuff like that. But besides that, so this group of aliens believe the Manhunter is hiding in Rushville. Now, originally they mentioned how a Green Lantern came and took captive of the Manhunter, and he was supposed to be set for execution. They don't think that's the case. They think whoever the Green Lantern was hid the Manhunter in Rushville. So they're thinking this possibly. So thought process of, was it Hal Jordan, which now at the end of the episode doesn't seem to be the case. He was the one that did it, or was it what is it, the one that had the ring before Hal, Abensor, if I said his name right? Was it him? Was he the one that took captive of the Manhunter? Because it is kind of a coincidence that there was a Manhunter in Rushville. Well, let me back up. It doesn't necessarily say all this took place in Rushville, but if you look at just the circumstances of Abensor dying in Rushville, and then these 4 aliens being killed, and about an hour later, Hal Jordan shows up in Rushville. It just seems that there's a connection there. So I'm very curious on who was the one that took captive of the Manhunter, because it sounds like there's only one left. Now, I don't know if that to be true or not, but they give off the insinuating comments that as if it was the last Manhunter. But needless to say, they kind of like put a device to John's head and kind of show him the kind of destruction that these manhunters caused, and that they're giving him 24 hour or 48 hours to go in, identify the manhunter, and then call them to let them know. Otherwise, they're just going to go in and start blasting half of Rushville. And so now there's a little point that I want to bring up is when Hal and Carrie went to the ranch, went to the compound. Hal is questioning him in the sense of, this is pretty advanced. Like, he's been all over the galaxy. He's never seen advanced technology like this, to where it scanned these individuals and gave off the indication that, hey, these are not human, these are aliens. And he's continually asking, who gave you the technology, and then make it as like it's a gift from the person who put me in charge of all this, yada yada yada. So it's an interesting kind of like mystery going on. But John arrives back in Rushville. He goes to a diner, who just happens to run into Macon's wife, just sitting at the diner and all this stuff. They have a conversation about whether John trusts Hal or not. And then there's this line of like talking about, rich white men can do whatever they want and that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, that's unnecessary. You didn't really need to throw that in there. It's kind of like the same thing, the forced line in the Batman with Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman talking about white men and stuff like that. And I was just like, stop it. You don't need to add this stuff in here. You don't really need to. There is some like immigration undertones in this show through these first 2 episodes, particularly in episode 1, that I just don't think you need to have that in there, as it's really annoying. But besides the fact, John shows up back at the motel and heads over the ring or the lantern. We get to see Hal charge it up, which is pretty cool. And and John just basically explains everything that happened. Like it seems Hal has heard of manhunters before, but it doesn't give off the indication that he has met one in person before. So they call it a night. Meanwhile, Hal suits up and flies to, I guess, a prison planet and meets with Sinestro. And he asks Sinestro, what is a manhunter? Or tell me everything you know about a manhunter. And then Sinestro is kind of like, why don't you tell me about Jon Stewart? And so the episode ends there. So very interesting kind of like mystery going on. Yeah, it does come off as like a true detective with a Green Lantern skin on. But that's the thing. If you were gonna just treat this as a true detective type of thing, you could have just done a True Detective show. Like, I know there is a show out there. You could have done another season of that. And there are complaints that people have. The way Hal Jordan is treated in the first episode, particularly. The second one, not so much. At least I don't think I notice it as much. But the way they treat him as like he's some kind of loser or something like that. This is a guy who has probably saved Earth countless times from annihilation, whether it's from like meteors crashing into the Earth, alien invasions, whatever. But they treat him like he's some kind of joke, and like they don't really take him serious at times. So it is kind of like an annoying thing about it. But episode 2 was okay. I do like a good mystery, and I'm curious on who is this benefactor, because I do think in one of the clips that you see in like the trailers or like stuff like that, they do kind of, you don't see what it looks like, but you do see somebody shapeshift into a manhunter. So I'm gonna be very curious about that. I'm curious on who's the Green Lantern that supposedly took this manhunter into custody. I doubt it's John. I doubt the manhunter is John Jones. I don't know. It could be interesting. I don't know, but we'll see. we'll see. But that is basically it for episode 2 of Lanterns. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section. If you are new to the channel, be sure you hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow me on the Shawnee D Man Gaming channel, Kick, Twitch, Rumble, the Nerd Talk podcast on Spotify. Other than that, guys, have a great one, and I will see you all in the next video. Y'all have a good one.